Okay, so here's my version of the Redneck Margarita Machine. Now there are tons of videos of these. There are entire websites showing you how to make them. I'm not going to go into that level of detail here. I'm just going to show you what I did and some of the even mistakes I made. And, I mean, this thing works good, but maybe it'll help give you some ideas if you're thinking about building one of these yourself. So, here's the first thing. Notice a lot of people would have their discharge tube that comes back inside come up through the bottom. Well, to me, that just kind of created a leak path. And this kind of gives you a visual of how much stuff you have in there. So it makes it easier. Instead of having to open the lid, see how much you have inside, you can see it, and then when you turn it on, you can see it flow. So people seem to like it at parties. The other thing is my electrical box. Switch is external, it's on the pot, and it's all rated for outdoor. Even this switch cover is made for marine use. They're not expensive, you can get them anywhere. So the switch is inside. I mean, wet hands, stuff, your margarita or slushies or whatever drip on this thing, it's not going to get inside and short anything out. So that works really well. The other is I went ahead and spent a little more money on the valve. So this is a much larger kind of industrial PVC valve for sprinkler systems. The thing that's nice about this is it is completely serviceable. And that's one thing kind of see as a theme in this thing, is that I built it so that I can take it apart and clean it. Very, very, very important. I notice a lot of people will build these, they glue them together, and that's great, but how do you clean it out? So I want to be sure that I'm not making anybody sick or there's any debris in there that I can't clean out. In fact, this is the second time I've used this and I've cleaned it out. It's pristine inside. And also this type of valve has these screw bosses in it, so I was able to mount it. It's pretty secure, so I just cheap aluminum bar to mount it, and then bolted it in. The nuts on the other side, nuts and washers on the other side to hold it in place. One thing to think about too is, yes, these are different lengths and they mount at different heights on the pot. And some may say, well, that's kind of sloppy. Well, maybe, but the other part is, what this does is it creates geometrically two different size triangles. So when it moves, those two triangles fight against each other. So it actually makes your mount much stronger. The power cord, you see it is 3-prong grounded. And this is just an old computer cord that I had laying around. I have several of these laying around. So it's just spare parts off of my shelf for me. But if you really want to, instead of buying a $10 extension cord, you can go to a electronics store, and for about $3 you can get one of these, and it's plenty long enough. One thing you might notice about the pot is it's molded with this ring already in it. Now this pot is normally meant for coiling your water hose. So your water hose comes in here, obviously it's upside down, so your water hose comes in here and you coil it inside. It's supposed to look nicer. Well, one, this is really strong. I mean, one thing I noticed is when I was testing some of these, I mean, you put a little bit of weight on the upside down pot and it flexes a lot. And that's not good. I didn't want that. This one's nice and rigid and can handle a lot of weight. The other one is this hole is nice and trimmed out and it was already the right size. So, hey, cool, I didn't have to make that. And it just looks a little nicer. It did make it trickier to put everything in. Although, you will notice I have some vinyl tubing, a couple layers of vinyl tubing on the bottom. It ended up being a plus and a minus. Part of it is I misjudged the mounting depth of the disposal, and the bottom of the disposal is right at the bottom of the pot, so it was hitting the table. So I had to get a little bit of distance at least between the pot and the table. But the ended up being a nice side benefit is that this plastic's kind of slick. This vinyl tubing obviously is not. So this thing doesn't really want to slide on a table. So that's actually been quite a benefit. So let me go ahead and turn this bad boy inside. And get this lid off first. You notice the discharge, when I set it up, it doesn't, maybe kind of hard to see, it doesn't shoot straight down into the vessel. It comes in at an angle. Because there's always a clockwise motion in the swirling, and at least here in the northern hemisphere, on the disposal. So I angled this to kind of help with that swirl. Now, the fact that this motor inlet is offset, doesn't necessarily help the swirl because it kind of doesn't swirl very nice, so it's not centered. But it does still work just fine. It chops just fine. So now get down to the business end. Okay, here's where it did get a little tricky. Okay, because I didn't come straight out, I had to come up and out at an angle. It's just deep in here, it's kind of hard to see. In order to get this to line up right through that hole, I mean, I was cutting my tubing and gluing it and measuring it with a dial micrometer, so it was pretty tricky, but I did manage to get it right in the center. The other thing is I have a silicone coupling in here to couple the PVC to the cut short discharge tube of the disposal. It's only about this long with my fingernail. And there is a difference in diameter of the pipe, so this kind of helps solve that problem. The other part is take off these two screws, snake this thing out with the valve already off, and it comes right out and you can clean it up. Okay, so here's the switch box. Again, it's outdoor rated, and this is the bottom hole that I ran all the wires through. So since it's in the bottom, you know, all sorts of gravity is going to draw everything down. I didn't worry about covering that up. There's no way for fluid to back itself back up into there. So here's the computer cable. It's tied in as the input wire. And then quite simply just a hole on the side, and then you just put a zip tie on it. And the zip tie is big enough that it doesn't pull through, and you have a little slack in the cable. That way, if somebody kicks or pulls on the cable, you're not going to pull the cable on the box. It's just going to stop right down here, so that's pretty important. And of course, tied it off here as well, keep it off the motor. And just a standard Romex I had laying around to go from the box into the motor. This is the one modification I had to make because, again, I misjudged the mounting depth. So because the bottom is so close, I couldn't come out straight out the bottom with the wire like you normally would at the sink. Thankfully, though, this is an empty cavity. So I drilled a 1/2-inch hole in the side of the case just above that. And then, of course, protected the wire with some vinyl tubing and electrical tape, just, you know, make sure vibration doesn't cut into the wire and ground it out. But that works just great. As far as pitfalls, this is a KitchenAid half-horse non-stainless chopper. It seems to be okay. I keep it pretty clean, so rust isn't an issue. I do notice that if you don't watch it, if you run the cycles too long, the thermal switch will keep tripping. So if you turn it on, run it, and all of a sudden it stops, just wait a minute, pick it up just a little bit, just enough to get your hand under it, push that, you're good to go. Just keep going. And you don't want to keep doing that, though. The more often you trip this, the more easily it trips. So you want to try and avoid that. Other than that, that's pretty much it. These things are pretty simple, pretty easy to build, and hope it gives you some ideas for yours. Thanks for watching.